Guys, with basically, I would say the death of Magic, I don't know. I'm just getting real sick and tired of Magic nowadays, and I want to pivot over to some more content. So if you like this kind, like and subscribe. I don't really care. But Sorcery, Contested Realm, it's a really fun game. I would highly recommend it. If you don't know what the game is, I'd highly recommend you go and watch somebody else explain the game, or just learn how to play the game at least beforehand. Or if you don't want to stay, by all means, please do. I'd really appreciate it. But I'm going to go over all the alpha and beta avatar cards because Arthurian Legends is almost out, and I think it would be a really good idea to just go over all the current avatars and just kind of see how I would rate them and how good I think some of these are, because some of them are definitely better than others. And while my opinion might not be the tried and true, like, man, this thing's going to be, top one sort of avatar, whatever, I'm not going to be the best at rating them, but I think I would have really good input coming in from playing like 10 plus years of Magic. So by all means, if you like the content, you want to see more of it, like and subscribe. I don't care. Just if you want to see more of it, by all means, I wouldn't mind. I've been having a lot of fun playing this. And let's just start off. Starting off with the Avatar of Air, being able to tap to player draw a site once a turn. If you occupy an air site, you may fly a unit atop it to a nearby site. It being able to move itself or another minion or another unit that's on it at the same time. While it is really good, I think that it's one of those cases where if you need a lot of the movement and want to be able to move your stuff a lot earlier than you should be able to, it can be very good. I would probably rate this as a kind of a B tier, because in the overall case of the game, I think that as we start to shift more and more into having multi-element decks, I think these are going to be it's going to be a little less. Obviously, you're going to build your deck a little more around this, but I think that in the current state, just being able to move it once on your turn isn't going to be as impactful, and I don't think will impact games as much. It can be fairly good, but it's one of those, like, just little sprinkles on top of the ice cream, if you will. Moving on to Avatar of Earth, being able to tap player draw site. Basically, every single avatar has this ability, but you have +1 power for each nearby Earth site. It's okay. That's the only thing. It is a very defensive card, just because you can't guarantee that your opponents are going to be playing any sort of Earth sites. So I think it's fine, and it's one of those, if you're playing Earth and you don't have any other avatar, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you don't have any other ideas or just don't know what you're going to do, I think this is fine. I think it's not a downside in any sense, so that's why I'm probably just going to chuck it in like a C tier kind of deal, where it wouldn't be bad to have this, but it's not really going to benefit you. D and below is more of the, like, it's going to just be either harmful for you or there are just so many better options. I mean, yes, there are better options for this, but in general, it's a solid defensive card. It will block against a lot of your opponent's things, especially if you can get even like one more up in the realm, like one northward or something. If you're able to just move at least once and are just able to put out a bunch of land sites fairly early, I think it's going to be really good. But in general, it's very defensive, and since they're all nearby, you have to be in a fairly decent clump for this to be like really good. But even just having 4 or so power can still be good. But I don't see this being a very aggressive card. I think this is going to be a lot more of if we see some like earth, water, like defensive more playstyle, more of a control-y sort of play, then I could see this being kind of good. But other than that, I don't see it being played as much. Moving on to Avatar of Fire, being able to tap this turn fire sites in your hand, or also fireballs. Fireball isn't the best card currently, and it's having to have all those sites in your hand when you could just be spending those turns to draw into other sort of cards. Like I'd rather be drawing spells that do better things instead of just, all of a sudden all my the land sites in my hand are fireballs, because they still do cost mana in order for them to play. So spending that like 4 mana every single turn just to get a fireball, while it can be decent, I think this is honestly just one of the worst ones, because it leans more towards a playstyle that shouldn't be like. Obviously, if you can draw like a bunch of sites in your hand and you build more towards that, it can be good. But I'm gonna chuck this more into a kind of a D tier, just because you don't want to only be really drawing sites. That's mainly my problem. You don't want to be drawing all of these sites. You want to be drawing more spells to get you more in an advantageous state in order for you to get to the point where you get your opponent to death's door, and then yeah, maybe you can chuck a fireball at them. But in general, it's a lot easier to play around your opponent having Avatar of Fire, and you don't want to be spending all that mana to discard like all these sites in order to do this. I just don't think it's very good. I don't think you'd ever want this type of effect. And eventually, if Arthurian Legends come out and this card's suddenly busted, I mean, hey, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Avatar of Water, being able to flood a site adjacent to your body of water until you do so again. You may teleport there. This one's fun. All right, I would say this is a pretty decent ability, especially because Flood gives you water threshold if it's your site. So if you were able to have, if you're able to mix and match a bunch of different elements in order for you to build a better deck, let's say water, like the water earth that I was talking about earlier, instead being able to play out some of those earth sites and then being able to teleport over there, or having some of the non-threshold sites, playing those out, being able to flood those to get the water threshold and also teleport there, that thing's really good. It can get you out of some very sticky situations, and honestly, I'd probably chuck this in like a B tier in a way. It encourages a lot more of a, like, my deck is just good, so I'm going to rely more on that, and doesn't really allow your avatar to do a whole lot besides just defense and evasion. But if that's all you need and your deck is just that good, I think this can actually be a fairly good card. But also, if any sort of site provides water threshold, it's also a water site, so you kind of have to play around with it a bit and add a lot more sites in your atlas that make non-water threshold but also make water threshold in order for you to teleport around things. I just think it's a very good evasive tool. It will always be at least good, but it's weird. I definitely think it's probably along the B tier kind of area. And then there's Battle Mage, which is a 3 attack. It's currently the only one with more than 1 attack on an avatar, and it has, whenever this attacks and kills an enemy, you may draw a spell. This definitely, obviously, is a lot more aggressive card. I actually have a Battle Mage deck. It's a mono fire Battle Mage deck, and I think attacking and killing an enemy, drawing you a spell, can be good, but it revolves around your opponents playing a lot more of those lower powered units. I can never remember if they're just called minions or if they're just called units. I can't remember, but I think Battle Mage can be good in specific matchups, but in its current state, since there's a lot more of a control style, like control mid-range style, like meta almost, there isn't really necessarily a meta per se at the moment, but since there are a lot more pushes to be a lot more control-y, having a lot higher powered minions, I think this isn't as good. Yes, you can like play a desert and swing in with a Battle Mage in order for you to deal that last points of damage for you to draw spells, but at the same time, you're still then dealing, the 4 damage in order to kill a 4 power minion in order for you to get that draw off. And while it's not the best, I think this would be a lot better if we can do a lot more stuff with in later sets, with giving your avatar a lot more life, giving a lot more defense, being able to play a little bit around more of your avatar actually being on offense. but in its current state, it's not the greatest. So I'm also gonna conveniently chuck in a B tier because it's one of those, looking into the future, it can be good, and while it has to attack and kill a minion, which I might even chuck it down even to a C tier, it still just, it will require the future, basically. I'm looking more into the future, how that's going to interact with things, and I feel like Battle Mage can get to that point if we just get more cards that allow the avatars to do a lot more, and if there was a lot more of an aggressive meta, having a lot lower powered minions, then it can be good, but in its current state, it's not greatest. So yeah, I'd actually probably just chuck it in C tier. Death Speaker, being you may cast one dead minion each turn, and for 0 if you're on death's door, whenever you summon a minion this way, banish it. So this is only for the Genesis abilities, which are the enter the battlefield effects, and in the current state, there aren't too good of Genesis abilities. I mean, you have the Grandmaster Wizard that can draw you 3 spells, which is really, really good. But this is definitely just, it's definitely better than Battle Mage, where eventually it can just be absolutely insane, especially if you get on death's door and then just start just winning the game, basically. But it will definitely be one of those, it can eventually be to the point where this card can be absolutely broken, but in its current state, it's good, but there's more. There can be more. So that's why I'm probably honestly gonna chuck this in an A tier, just because looking at it currently, it's still good. There's just not as much to play around with it, but in the future, it's definitely gonna be, oh my gosh, it's, if they keep printing out really good Genesis abilities, this card's gonna be absolutely broken. So I think in the current state, it's more of like a B tier as well, but eventually in the future, it's gonna be A tier. That's why I'm chucking in A tier right now. I think it's just good. The Elementalist. All right. This is the one that I was told that not a lot of people actually play the Elementalist. I don't quite understand why, but right off the bat, you have an additional one of each threshold. I immediately put this as at least an A tier minimum, just because it allows you to basically play any deck. You're able to play all four elements basically for free. While it doesn't give you like extra benefits, once each turn, all that, over the course of the game, there will always be cards where you're like, I would rather have had this than this card in this deck. So being able to play every single element, yeah, there will be cards that have multiple different types of thresholds. But Arthurian Legends, I've been told that they're going to be multi-threshold kind of cards, which I think is dope. But I think this will only make it better, because now being able to play all of those cards and not being restricted by some of the cards that you have in the deck, I think it will just be better just in general. And I think this card is just great. I mean, I have an Elementalist deck. It works wonders. I mean, you can play, in the same turn, you're able to play your in the same game, you're able to play your Raised Deads with your Great Old Ones, your Poison Novas to just suddenly just basically board wipe. Being able to play just all of these cards in this deck, and being able to just, you can play literally whatever style you want, just add the best cards from each element. I just think that's a really, really good ability, and will only get better as time goes on. Now moving on to Enchantress. Whenever you cast a spell, you may animate target aura until your next turn. It's an aura minion with power equal to its cost. At the current moment, so this card is one of those, like, there aren't really enough auras for you to build into a, like, aura tribal kind of deck where you're mostly playing nothing but auras. But because of that point, it's not that great, and yeah, you can build around it, but a lot of the auras you want to play, your your blizzards, your the tangle card, or the the Earth spell, the 4-mana Earth spell that basically disables all things in a 2x2 area for 3 turns. Like, at the end of the day, it's what? There's your 1 costs, which then become 1/1s, which aren't that great. I mean, your 1 powers. The 4 drop that's now all of a sudden a 4 attack. They're not the best, and even if you look at it on the opposite end of it being more of a control card where you could take out your opponent's auras, a lot of the current auras right now prevent you from even attacking their auras. And even if then, I mean, okay, you get rid of their summoning sphere. I mean, they're only playing that to really push in that early game aggression, and then eventually leading into, you know, pushing that more and more sites towards you so they can summon their minions over there anyway. So it's kind of just like a tech avatar that just, I don't think really works very well. And I think I'd probably chuck this in D tier right for now. Once future cards come out, maybe, but I still don't think this is going to be very good. I don't think it's worth playing right now or even in the future. I can maybe see in the future if they try to lean more into this, but then at that point, they're taking away from other sort of avatars and how they build their decks, or just cards in general. So I think this just doesn't really work right now in its current standings, and you won't want this in the future. You'd want some of the other cards, just because there aren't as many auras that you'd want to take, and it's just not worth it. Right, moving on to Flame Caller, being able to tap and banish all your dead fire minions to shoot a projectile, which means it just shoots in a straight line, either north, south, east, west, and it deals damage equal to the sum of their fire threshold. While this does obviously lean more towards the aggressive side of the game, and while you do need to pump out a lot more of your very cheap minions in order for them to die, in order to get this off, it can be a fairly good late game finisher or ping off some of your opponents like really powerful minions. It's not that great. It makes you lean a lot more towards that just mono fire style deck, and I don't think mono fire at its current standings has the ability to really lean into this like really hard, because mono fire just wants you to put a lot of pressure very early until you get to a lot more of your late game cards, and this doesn't. There aren't as many like very cheap minions for you to just keep casting, for them to just keep dying in order for you to get this effect like fairly often or in a good time, like a good timely manner. So I think this card is fine and can actually be fairly good once later sets come out, but I think at its current standpoint, I would honestly kind of call this like a maybe like a upper C tier kind of deal. Like, it's maybe lower B in a way, because it will definitely get better as cheaper and cheaper cards come out for you to get this off and for you to deal, you know, suddenly massive damage out of nowhere. But its current standing, it doesn't quite do that as much. It's even better once you get off, you know, those like really high threshold minions. But I don't think it's that great at its current standings, but like most of these, it will definitely get better over time. So it's a fine avatar, and you can grab it if you're doing a lot more mono fire, but I don't think it's that great in its current standing. Geomancer is, so its tap ability of player draw site also accompanies if you played an earth site, fill a void adjacent to you with rubble. So adjacent being north, south, east, west of the avatar, but you can also tap to replace an adjacent rubble with the topmost side of your atlas. This can be very good. It can allow you to ramp quite a bit more. It will be a lot better if they start adding a lot more cards that use the rubble mechanic a little bit more. But even in its current standings, it's still good. It's still fine. It's not something that you just... It's not something you'd immediately just be like, I want that. I want it right now. Good. being able to just play out a lot more of your earth sites and then have the rubble to then create more without having to just sit there and, you know, draw a site. All right, for the beginning of the turn, all right, now tap Geomancer, play the site. I think being able to have that extra option for just filling in the rubble is pretty good, which is why I'd probably say it's like upper B tier, maybe lower A tier kind of deal. Like, it's still good and will still ramp you even when you don't have those ramp options, but it's still, if they play more into the rubble mechanic, then it will be a lot better. But at its current standings, it's honestly fine. It's something that you can run, and if you really wanted to, you definitely could, and it can be very good in the actual game. But there just needs to be that little more to push it into already, like, great. Like, it needs just that little push more. On to Pathfinder, your Atlas can't contain duplicates, which at its current standing might be fairly difficult. Draw no sites during setup, so you're starting with 3 cards, so just your 3 spellbook cards, and you may tap and reveal and play the topmost site of your Atlas to an adjacent void or rubble and move there. I personally don't think this card is very good at all. Mainly because you'll have to eventually put your Pathfinder in a not very advantageous point in order for you to get those lands, and not allowing you to draw sites instead and choose where you place them, and they have to be adjacent to the Pathfinder, I just do not think is very good. And I don't want to put this in F tier, but I honestly kind of do, just because not giving you that option and ability to play, like, sometimes, like in most decks, you want to play specific sites in specific turns. So, like, if you suddenly rip a tower off the top and you're like, wait, I don't need this 2 mana. If it's turn 1 and you have like a 1-drop, a 3-drop, and a 4-drop, you've wasted a mana. Like, sometimes you don't want that. If you want to build more around this and make it more of a all-colored threshold kind of deal, it still just isn't as good, because sometimes you'll inevitably rip off the top a site that just doesn't give you the threshold you want right now, and you'd rather have other things. Because this also just, you cannot play sites with this. Like, it does not have an ability that says you can play a site, meaning you just can't play site. So there's no point drawing the sites from your deck. You will always have to play it from the top, and I just don't think that's very good, because, yeah, like I said, there's some instances where you don't want certain thresholds, because you want to be focusing more on a different one because the cards in your hand, and this is just not very reliable. It doesn't help you, and so yeah, I'd either put it in like the lower D, if not F tier. Moving on to Seer, though, I'm gonna say it, Seer's S tier. All right, being able to, at the start of your turn, look at the top at your next site or spell, you may put it on the bottom of its deck. That is always good. Being able to manipulate the top of your deck, especially once we move up to the, because at the current point, it's a 40-20 deck sizes. Once we get up to the 50-30 with Arthurian Legends, and then eventually the 60-40 in the future, being able to just every turn see the top of your deck and be able to choose, like, oh, I need this right now, or, because sometimes you'll look at the top and be like, it's just good enough to where I don't mind not playing as much now for me to just draw into that. But later turns, whenever you're like, I need that card, or if you're looking at your next Atlas and going, ooh, I really need this certain threshold and this just isn't giving it to me, then this will just help you. It will always be good. I think it's probably one of the best sorcerers, if not the best, and it will only get better from here on out because the higher deck sizes, being able to just cycle through a lot more of your deck in order for you to get to those very key cards. So yeah, I'd put it at S tier. Sorcerer is very simple. Very, very simple. Everybody, I think most Magic players would come into this immediately go, Sorcerer, broken. And that's what I initially thought. However, I would call this, I would say this is good, and I would put this at the upper echelon of A tier, because it just says you can tap to either play or draw a site, or tap to draw a spell. That is good. Having cards is always good, but until there are a lot more cards that care about having more cards in your hand, or just being able to like manipulate the top of your deck like Seer, I think, while yes, drawing spells is good. We've seen with the Nimbus Djinn, just having more cards in your hand is good. I play this in my mono air deck just because it just needs more cards. That's literally the whole thing. It needs more cards at all times. Drawing spells whenever you really need them in order for you to teleport this away with teleport, or being able to eventually in the late game needing to draw into that like board clear, or drawing into your Nimbus Djinn, or whatever you need to. Being able to draw into that will always be good, but at the same time, you're still just drawing a spell. It's always up to random chance. Well, yes, it is really good. That's why I'm saying it's more of the upper echelon of A, maybe low S. But yeah, just drawing cards is good. There's no downside to it. That's honestly, I'm tempted to just chuck it in S. It will just be good. Always having cards is good. Moving on to Spark Mage, though, being able to tap and target nearby location, which is in the 3x3 area around your avatar, deal damage to another random unit there equal to the sum of air threshold on spells you cast this turn. This involves a lot more. So in Magic, there's a storm mechanic, which requires you to play a lot of different spells, like a lot of spells, in order for you to just suddenly, boom, dome somebody in the face for a lot. This can be really good, especially if they play more into this, like air being the storm style deck where they're just slinging spells left and right, being able to just slightly ramp out a little bit more until eventually, boom, 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 you win the game. That can be really, really great. And I would honestly say that this is at its worst, a B tier, at its best, an upper A tier. So I'm probably just going to chuck it in like an A tier and just say it will always be good. And if they play more into this, like play a spell, draw a card, play another spell, draw a card. Because the moment they start printing cards in this, with any sort of set that gives you mana, like spend mana to make mana, suddenly this is broken beyond repair. So this will eventually be broken. I bet you, hands down, I'll put my fist down, like it will eventually be probably the best, but at its current standings, it's just good. It will always have its place, and especially in a lot more mono air decks, you can splash in for a little bit extra stuff, but at the end of the day, this will always just be good. And if we eventually get more into a more aggressive style play that allows people to push a lot more stuff in, just being able to have that, like, all right, I'm gonna deal with a lot of your creatures and now deal with a lot more just because my Spark Mage exists, it will still always be good. That's why I think, yeah, Spark Mage will just always be good, and I can't dog on it. And the last one in the current alpha beta set is the Wave Shaper, which allows you to tap and flood a site near your body of water until you do so again. Tap minions without submerge there. They don't untap the next time they would. This is a very, very control-y card. Like I said earlier, with the flooding giving you water threshold, that is still good. If you decide to target one of your sites, it will give you water threshold. But being able to force like a big minion to tap and not untap can give you a very good advantage. And that's why I think it is good. But it still requires you to make those bodies of water, which isn't that hard if you're building around it, which is why I'm not going to make that as a negative for it, like a con for it. But it is good, but it does also require your opponent to be playing a lot more of those higher powered minions in order for you to get the most value out of it. But once we start seeing a lot more of an aggressive meta, if we do, then this will actually genuinely help. So you can just, all right, you're pushing all of this damage. All right, I'm just going to tap down this minion so that now, you can't attack me. I'm not taking a buttload of damage on this turn. I can survive another turn or two. At this thing's worst, it can only tap like a 1 power. At its best, it's basically a time walk, which if people who are coming from just playing sorcery don't know, time walk is an old magic card that's 2 mana. You take an extra turn after this one. Insanely broken. So if somebody refers to time walk, they refer to taking an extra turn. So being able to just tap, take an extra turn after this one, if that's the kind of meta that's being played when this thing's really good, it can be the best. If you can spend your turns just not allowing your opponents to do anything, or if there's like an insane combo deck that ramps out, Great Old One, or being able to, pump out the Mountain Giant, whatever, the big 8 power. But if they're able to push out a lot of those really big minions, or heck, even Nimbus Djinn, if you're able to tap that down whenever they have a bunch of cards in their hand, and you're able to get away from that so you can prevent their game plan, then it's really good. So this card will never not be good. And yeah, like I said, at its worst, it just it prevents little damage, but at its best, it can prevent a game loss. So that's why I'm probably going to chuck this in A tier, just because in general, it will never not be good. Because early game, late game, it can either win you the game or not do a whole lot. Which, even when it's not doing a whole lot, it's still doing something. So that's what I would rate all the avatars in. If you guys don't like it or want to comment about how I got something wrong with it, please let me know. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.